can't say that I came to having any compassion for the male until the last year or so. I really believe God gave me boxing gloves and a tough exterior as part of who I am, and made me just go to war against people that would buy and sell children, and kept me right there for a few years. We needed an advocate for these girls. But somewhere along the line, one of our board members kept saying, Linda, don't forget the boys. And it's a woman. It's a woman in the Washington, D.C. area. And she went with me to the Village of Hope, and we were starting to accumulate so many little boys that were coming off the streets and under the Teen Challenge drug program, and they operate the Hope Village. And she said, what did you bring for these boys? I said, well, a few things. She said, look at all you brought for the girls, because I really do kind of do a lot of gift giving to my girls. And she went out. She had somebody draw all of their feet, the sizes, and I saw the feet sizes from little to men. Everybody from the doctor that's on staff there to the newest little boy that you probably wouldn't want to be alone with because he's pretty rough. And she had new tennis shoes bought for them, which is a pretty luxurious thing there. She got them all expensive tennis shoes. She says, what are we telling them? What are we telling them? And I thought, well, this is kind of nice, but it kept nagging at me. And we were, especially after that, we started picking up private school for some of these boys that really needed more discipline and needed to be caught up. And so we started moving towards the little boys. And again, I felt kind of good about it because I thought they could be my grandkids. And I had there was a brick wall at the village, and it's facing inside because I'd explained I didn't want any of my kids, not my real granddaughters, not anybody, to be outside those walls because it was so unsafe for my little girls. And I thought, you know, I should have put the little boys there too because I wouldn't want my grandsons out there either in this world. But it just started working on me, you know, as God does. Then I did a worldwide report that will come out this next year. Very soon you'll start seeing this report, and it analyzed markets. Now remember, I'm a businesswoman. I chaired the Small Business Committee for Congress, and I ran businesses from the time I was young, and I like business. And so I decided I would look at the whole market. I'd been in Amsterdam and I looked at the cost of the property, I looked at the cost of the stalls, I looked at the whole economic system, and I go, they're driving their economy by sex tourism. And I go, you know, I'm gonna look at the markets all over the world. I'm gonna design a system that analyzes the markets, the product, the sellers, and the buyers. You need all those things for a market. So out of that, we started looking at that, tracing property ownership, looking at how the money went country to country. Where does it go to the end of the day when they take it away from the girl in the Amsterdam stall and they send that money? Well, they put it in an ATM and they send it back to Morocco or a few other places. We know some of those things. But how do those work? Who's really getting the money? Who's driving the market? Because if I could make the market change so they didn't want to go after product, I wouldn't have as many girls going in to slavery in legal markets like Amsterdam or Australia or other places that legalize prostitution, which is where you find these girls moved into because they make so much money for the bad guys. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. Well, along the way, I send all the guys and women out, and they start doing these investigations, and they start bringing me back the information. I got 2 or 3 things that just shocked me, the numbers. In one 30-day period of just pulling for me all of the porn sites based on certain criteria, I had 2.2 million escort sites. This is this year, by the way, at the first of the year. And it reaffirmed things I found earlier in the last about 18 months. And my goodness, I said, we can't manage 2.2 analysis. We're gonna look at all these sites, and they're gonna have indicators of youth being sold, barely legal, et cetera. Escort normally means you're gonna make contact with a real person somewhere out there. 2.2, would they have 2.2 million sites in English, which would only be designed in a way to really appeal mostly to the British, the Canadian, and the American, predominantly American? Would they have that many if there weren't clients? And I said, okay, count them, because we can count unique individuals going into those sites. Actually, if we had clearance, we could know who you are too. And by the way, if you think nobody can find you, you're getting really, really wrong. You could be like one of my friends, Randy, who spent a couple years in jail because they found 5 in his 2,000 pictures, 5 were children. So as we looked at this, and I looked at all these sites, I'm going, oh my goodness, count them. How many individual users are going on? One site alone had 5.5 million in a month. It verified another study, and we're finishing quantifying all the numbers because it's still taking a while, and I'm doing some backup right now that'll come out in this report. But when we started looking at all the numbers, it verified one that was done by Nielsen's rating and another one that was done by NCMEC, which is National Center for Exploited Children. There's several studies have gone as to how many people are going on for pornography. Pornography goes to action in so many cases, and then action goes to victimizing children in so many cases, because women just aren't going to put up with what they have to put up with in pornography or in being used sexually. 72 million is a minimum figure of individuals that went on in 1 month that would be speaking English, that would go to a site, that would have an English marketing direction. 32 million individual, unique individuals. Now, assuming the majority of that, high majority, probably we're looking 4 out of 5, are male, and the demographics in America of the male in the 100 million people that are males between 14 and 65, there's about 100 million. Those demographics end up saying about 1 out of 3 males, if the unique individual, and if the analysis of 4 out of 5 are male, are going onto a porn site every month. Now let's say some of those bleed out, and we've got some ID because now we're looking carefully at the IPs, what country they're on, in, et cetera, et cetera. The pornography usage is just huge, huge. And that's not measuring the spin-out escort service activity.
Pure passion that beats for Christ.
I'm wondering what you'll be when you grow up, what you'll do and where you'll go. On this road you'll travel far. There's one thing that you can know for sure. Your daddy's here and will love you. Caring and protecting daddy's girl is what I'll do. When your childhood is all through, when you leave and live out on your own, your daddy's here and will love you. Caring and protecting daddy's girl is what I'll do.
Pornography is not victimless. Real men defend women and children no matter whose daughters they are. Become a defender today.
Now, we've actually looked at who owns the base sites, and we're starting to get some of that tracking. We have a program now where it looks like spider webs, but you might think you're over here selling a little porn, but you're probably connected over here to somebody actually marketing that porn further to get somebody else to come and buy a 15-year-old they just snatched out of Toledo, Ohio. That whole network is what we're starting to look at. And all of a sudden, at first I was mad, and then I went into despair because I started seeing my husband, my son, my grandsons, all the men in my life in my church, and I'm going, oh God, this has to be affecting a lot. So I started looking at a lot of the base studies done by a lot of Christians. And I started finding a lot of the same people that I noticed you've interviewed and a lot of books written. And I'm going, they're saying the same thing. They're individually saying the same thing. We need to pull this message together. There's phenomenal messengers out there. There's great people that have done a good job. We need to figure out if we can find a way to make it not okay to buy pornography, not okay to fuel that sex industry, because it's fueling the victimization of the child used in pornography, of the woman in despair used in pornography, and it's spinning out to using them again in active sex, and often they're making the pornography, my girls are saying, while they're being used. Most of my girls that I've rescued all over have talked about the pictures taken of them during the time. What do you think those pictures are taken and used for? The pornography of ordinary men sitting in this church. The pornography of ordinary men that are sitting on the bus with you or the plane. It has to be. The demographics are so many. But then I realized the devil was having our lunch because they're daddies, they're granddads, they're sons, they're young men getting ready to go into marriages where they need to be able to understand the sexuality of their wife, to be able to fulfill what wonderfulness God has given them as a couple. God is giving us great gifts, and the devil is stealing them through this. So out of that came a meeting, one not talked about, won't be talked about. I pulled a group of men together in Washington, D.C., from all over the United States. Everything from teenage boys that we thought could manage it to older men, corporate heads, political figures, and I laid out before them a lot of the study. And then I had them for 2 days set in round tables listening to the FBI, the Cybercrimes Unit, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, victims groups from all over the United States who had come for this day as we write a report to analyze commercial sexual exploitation in America. Those men, out of that, formed the Defenders. They then developed an ad, a 60-second ad, a website. They'll be meeting again as they go to build the Defenders. And I'm not sure what they're going to do, but what I did realize real quickly is I have to step out of the room. I have to step out of the room. It's never going to be okay. Just because the world says it's okay to mix sexuality, God says no. He has a plan, and we're to follow that. So it's going to be quite exciting for me to watch it happen. And we will facilitate Shared Hope International, this new group, and probably stay under it corporately, because we have a very strong reputation. We're very much respected by this administration and political leaders who we've helped with laws and in America and other countries. And we think they need that. But we're going to be going out, and they're recommending now we connect the dots with all these other groups and give them a platform to build what they're already doing well, somewhat like we did with groups all over the world with the rescue movement. You won't see our name much intentionally. We go in, we go under a good group, we build their accounting systems, we make sure they're strong. We make sure that they can take a drop-in audit. I have a financial background. All of my people, a lot of them know how to do it. That we're going to come and look. We want to make sure that you're continuing to be the kind of group that has the integrity, and we're going to do that, kind of like taking care of teenagers in a way. And through that, we're going to raise you up. And as we raise up these groups and we help them be stronger, then they're raising up other groups around them, and we're building a network. We intend with the Defenders to build a messaging, a platform, that there can be the defenders of whatever. There's a Baptist conference on the East Coast that's picked this up. And one of the leaders of the Defenders is a pastor in Philadelphia who is a man that was a jazz musician, and now he pastors a very large mega church, an African-American church in Philadelphia. They can call themselves the Defenders of Philadelphia. They can call themselves the Defenders of the Baptist Conference, or whatever they want to do, because the Defender is what we want to label. And we want to change and bring pride back to the man who stands and says, I'm a defender, and take away what would be okay of a man saying, oh, that's just a man, men will be men, boys are like that, and change that. Then that's going to change, that's going to take men in the United States.
Pure passion beats for Christ.
And start where they are. They have others they can go to, and they're building a network. We started with hotlines on the website to send you actually to the Focus on the Family Counseling Network, who will refer you out. So if you need help, there's a number on there. If you think you have a friend that needs help, there's a number on there. The DefendersUSA.org. So it's the Defenders with an S, USA.org. And so you can go to that, and there's resources, there's books, they're pre-clearing books. And I noticed also that you have folks on your interview list that are on the website. The men have to make sure it's real, it's usable, and they've cleared it. They've got 3 or 4 on. By the time this comes on, they're going to probably have dozens. There is a shirt you can wear for your group, with your group. Their sponsors will sponsor your whole group if you don't have enough money. So there's curriculum on there. There's choices of curriculum, and you can read through and choose different ways. There's ways to protect your children, your family, yourself, a buddy system of monitoring each other online. Those are the things that are resources there. They're mainly referring people to phenomenal groups that have been out there. We're not inventing anything. We're putting it together, trying to make it a movement, giving new life and leverage to groups that have been phenomenally blessing where they are out there. And now we're making it available to more men, labeling it the Defenders, and I believe these men have started a movement. And it needs more men, and you can be a part of it by just today going on the defendersusa.org, finding out where to start, but start today. Your sons, your grandsons, yourself, you're not outside of the temptation. There is, though, a defendersusa.org. There's a connection for women. So many women are wives and mothers that have been hurt by this, or they know they have to do something themselves, but they don't have a man in their lives, or they have one that is not going to work. You can go on and get the same protections for your family. God will honor that, and He will show you. And we're building a network of women supporting and helping women. They will be meeting right alongside, not together, but right alongside in support of this. Not really an auxiliary, because it's also very, very much needed. There are groups out there helping women. We will start adding that to the website. You'll be able to go on the website and find that. So if you're a mom and you think your child is getting involved in pornography, go on to the defendersusa.org and you can find ways to help yourself. Be very careful when you go online. There's a lot of fraud out there, and they want you to go on so they can divert you or your child to the wrong place. The defendersusa.org, we've bought a whole series of web names to try to stop people from getting close and diverting our people going for help or our groups onto what would be pornography. But I believe that they're just as greedy as they've always been and just as innovative and pretty smart business people. They're going to try to figure out a way. So if you hear this message and you go online and you get something wrong, you also tell us that. And we will block them about as fast as they try to get in and distort this. God's in control. He's in control of this work. And the defenders are doing the right things. All things work together when we love God and we're called according to His purpose. This is His purpose, to grab the hearts of men, to make them what He intended them to be, so they can be the protector of the children. The greatest recruitment level online was not the little girl, although we found huge access points where they're recruiting that 12, 13-year-old girl that's on doing homework. They're recruiting her by changing language. We found bigger access points recruiting boys into pornography at the level of 13 to 17. Even cartoon characters, action characters they're familiar with on their video games, infiltrating, and then they get streamed pornography at them, and it's all in their mind. It's right there, and they're recruiting boys. And boys are buying online at a very high rate because they consume online now, because so many families are buying and doing credit card purchases that are online. We're finding a great growth there. I say 5 years, and if we don't stop it, we're not going to have very many young men that their sexual norm is anything other than pornographic images that they've seen, and then young wives that are going to have a different standard, and broken marriages by the millions if we don't do something about this. The defenders can make a difference.
Hi, I'm Cy Rogers, and I'm here to share my thoughts with you about some of the sexual struggles and the good news related to that in God's family. We're going to take a look today at one more area of struggle so common in God's family, and that's the issue of sexual addiction. Now, a lot of people have struggles with sexuality. Internet porn, things like masturbation, that doesn't necessarily mean addiction. When I think of an addict, though, I do think of someone, whether they're an alcoholic or a substance abuser, or even someone misbehaving sexually. When you're out of control and the appetite controls you, you don't control it, then that becomes an area of heightened concern. And so there are many people who've cultivated a natural sexual appetite to an unnatural level, where when it should have been, an appetite about that big, it's now grown to something about that big, and it puts pressure and begins to control a person's life, dominating their activities, their thoughts, their relationships. Then we're moving into that arena of greater concern. So when I think of an addict, I think of someone, as mentioned, they're not only out of control, even though they know what they're doing is wrong or destructive, they don't stop. And then secondly, they're taking enormous risks. Who doesn't know today about sexually transmitted disease? And yet in spite of all this good education widely available, people don't stop but persist in taking risks. And so even though it could lead to not only immoral behavior and illegal behavior, it could result in shame in community or disruption of a marriage. It can result in big consequences, and yet people persist. And especially in the internet age, where you don't have to go looking for it. It comes looking for you. You turn the channel, you turn online, and there's something there waiting to slime you. Many people find themselves in a ditch today, and you've dug it pretty deep, and maybe you can't climb out on your own. Well, there's good news for you. We serve a God who knows how to free you from your slavery. In fact, you know, a friend of mine who is a therapist in Los Angeles, her name is Jan Frank, she works with people who suffer with impulse problems. And when I asked her, what would you have me say to people in a nutshell if they're struggling with something like these sexual appetites that seem out of control? She said, tell them to get some accountability. They need to bring their darkness into the light. A counselor friend of mine once said, don't keep that secret with Satan. To be sure, it's a risk to open up and tell the truth about yourself, but I suppose it's a risk if you don't. So I can't tell you what to do. I don't know what the consequences might be faced. But surely, for the many people I know who've gone off into that ditch and they find themselves struggling there, even exposed in a scandal that made headlines in community, they generally wish they had opened up and told someone sooner rather than having it told on them later. So my encouragement is that you find professional assistance, especially with those who know about how the brain works, how these problems can be addressed. Not every counselor or pastor is trained to understand the issue of sexual addiction. But it is also true that every year thousands of men and women climb out of the ditch of sexual addiction. Just like other kinds of substance abuse can be conquered, this kind of abuse can too. Abusing yourself, you know, doesn't just mean you have to take alcohol too much or take some other kind of chemical like, crack or heroin. Whenever a person is sexually active, powerful chemicals are released in the brain that create patterns, and the more you reinforce those patterns, the more controlling they become. So it's really an internal problem that is biochemical in nature, not just moral and spiritual. So you need an informed counselor who understands this phenomenon, who can help you attend to that. So my encouragement is that you would seek professional assistance and know that there are many thousands who've conquered this problem. One of my favorite websites about this is bebroken.com. There are, in fact, interventions you can place on your computer, accountability partnerships and support groups from those who've been there, done that, like Sexaholics Anonymous. And so while these may not be the whole solution, they be one more ingredient in the big stew of God getting you back on track and out of that ditch. So you can do it. God is very willing to help you, and you'll have no greater advocate than God, who desires self-control in your life, and that's a goal that you can work toward, but even more so if you've got some support and encouragement to help keep you on track in that world of risk all around us, but also in here. Those are my thoughts about that, and I hope it encourages you today.